Hey, everybody, come on in and sit down on my couch. Let's have a little one-on-one, shall we? My format today is going to be designed like that. You're going to sit down in the living room with me at my home, which is always on fire. I'll get to that in a minute. The point being is that we're going to sit down and have a little chat like we're just hanging out on the couch. I'm going to take some comments from the live streams. A lot of you say, hey, DA, if you're not going to pay attention to the chat, then I'm not going to even comment. I do see your chat. And today I want to try to rectify some of those problems by going through some of those chat comments that I do see, but I didn't talk to in the live. Keep in mind when I'm going live, I've got a panel of people, sometimes guests that are on the show. And it would be rude for me to interrupt my panelists and my guest. And also, I have a lot to say, and I can't be in the middle of a stream of consciousness and stop everything to answer a question that just came up. But I do see your questions, and I do see your comments, and I do see your feedback, and I do read, at least I attempt to read every single comment that gets posted on my videos. And I usually just give it a thumbs up if I don't have something to say, or I somehow acknowledge and mark that I've done it so that you know that I've seen it. But today, I'm going to try a new format, which is the Fireside Chat. So come on over, sit down. This is something different. So I'm going to pin comments that I've seen. So people's names, usernames are going to be pinned on screen. We're going to show your comment. I'm going to address you as if you just asked me that question, even though I know you asked it from last night's live, more than likely. As we go forward, if you like this thing, let me know. If you like the format, like and subscribe, and make sure you let me know. I like that format. Keep doing it. Otherwise, I'll stop. But the idea is that every single night on the live, we have a lot of questions come in and people say I'm not addressing the questions. This is going to be my attempt to address last night's questions. And if you like it, I'll do the same kind of thing every single day following our Crimes After Dark. So, and by the way, here's a tip for you. If you like this format and you want that question answered by me, then say DA. And if you want to be highlighted on this type of show, the Fireside Chat, say DA, comma, what do you think about this? That lets me know that question is not just for the audience, it's for me as well. You want me to address it. If you want somebody specific on my panel to address it, Robin, Dago, JJ from the State of the Deep, Logan from Bronx Tales. If you want any one of the people on the panel who were on, or even a guest, say, Logan, can you tell me this? Or as an officer of, NYPD, what do you think about this? Address the question with the person's name, comma, question. That'll let us know that you want to be featured in this type of format. And we'll see how it goes and see if you like it. So let's get started right now on this new format. All right. Our first comment comes from Jeremy Pearson. By the way, if you haven't noticed, I'm going to take a moment to share you some things I don't talk about a lot. You notice how Jeremy Pearson has that little demon devil icon with the pitchfork and the wings? That is a perk of being a members only. It lets me know immediately when someone posts that they're a member only on my members thing. So they pay at least $2.99, maybe a higher level. Like I think this one right here is a badge for a little higher level. I think we've got 2 tiers. No, we used to have 3 tiers, but now we have 1 tier, $2.99. So anyways, this icon next to their name indicates that they're a member only. So it lets me know right away. I'll tell you this. This is part of this format, to share with you the little details. I don't see that icon and immediately say, oh, I got to pay attention to what they say, and I ignore everybody else. That's not what's happening. However, it does let me know that, hey, this person actually pays for behind the scene content. And so sometimes I'll give an extra shout out and say, hey, thanks, by the way, for being a member. So just a little tidbit if you didn't know why those little devil demon icons are on there. It was part of the branding, and our tiers used to have 3 little icons, one for the entry level tier, a different one for the mid-level tier, and another one for the highest level tier. And so I think all the images in our image collection are available for members only, and you could put a little icon next to you if you want to do that. So Jeremy Pearson, longtime commenter, longtime watcher, always in the show, always interacting, and a member of our channel. Thank you so much, by the way, for your support. Says, loved your show today, DA. Best I've seen from you in a while. And that took some work for sure, but well done. I appreciate that very much. That video, if you don't know that he's talking about, was the video I did breaking down Megyn Kelly and Howard Bloom's video, along with some stuff from Brent Turvey. And yes, that was a monster long video. I haven't done one like that, I don't think, ever quite like that. And I got a lot of comments from people saying that was some of my best work ever. So now that I know a lot of people positively reacted to that, chances are I'm going to try to do that again, because it sounds like it was a hit. So thank you very much, Jeremy, for letting me know. And by the way, for those who don't or didn't hear, I recorded the entire thing with audio that I was playing from other people and my comments in between, and then realized after an hour and a half of recording that that I forgot to turn on the recording of their sound, and I had to recut all of those videos and splice them back in. I was up for 9 hours working on that video, and it was a disaster, and I got no sleep that night, and it was horrible. And yet the payoff is this, where Jeremy says, that was some of your best stuff yet. Thank you. And it must have been hard work. It was much harder than it should have been. So thanks. All right, bring another comment up on screen. Amanda B. At State of the Deep, hello, read the chat, Joe. Now, the reason I've highlighted this one is several reasons. Of course, if you're not familiar, the wrench means Amanda B is one of our moderators. The icon with the demon on it means that she's a member as well to the channel. And State of the Deep is one of my panelists, JJ State of the Deep. What I wanted to highlight on this comment and bring up to your attention is the read the chat, Joe, is an inside joke. We have a lot of inside jokes. So if you're not a member of this channel, you don't even have to be a member. If you haven't been hanging out with this chat, which, by the way, I think that read the chat did come from members chat. Let me explain what happened. It was a trip to Moscow, Idaho, in which JJ from State of the Deep flew out from the Colorado area, Denver, Colorado area, and came out to go to Moscow, Idaho, and Pullman, Washington with me. And we were doing a members only live, I think, at the time when this came up. And we were just running at the mouth constantly. And there was questions in the chat, and Amanda started bugging JJ and said, hey, read the chat. This question's in the chat. Read the chat, Joe. Joe, read the chat. And it became a running gag because after like the 50th minute, we're like, we see that. We will read the chat. So now every once in a while, Amanda likes to pipe in with, read the chat, Joe. So those of you who don't understand the inside jokes, I thought it would be a moment for you to see. We have a lot of inside jokes. Cockswagger is another inside joke. I just let it slip out of my, I said, I walked across the street with cockswagger, and that's become a running joke to say that I have cockswagger. We have a lot of inside jokes that you only kind of picked up if you saw it happen when it happened. But anyways, so that's another one of those tidbits and I wanted to highlight when I saw it and said, hey, that's a great time for me to explain that. Novarder, I'm not sure how to pronounce this. Hello, my grandma hello, my grandma Mai is a big fan. Please say hello to Robin. So maybe there was a little typo there, so I tried to read it the way that it was on there. And I'm like, what the? But look, here's the thing. This is what I thought was so cool. We have regular panelists, and Robin doesn't get a lot of love from the chat. So, I mean, she does and she doesn't. Her and her cat sometimes get a little love. Sometimes people pick on me personally, saying that we won't let Robin talk. I don't know if you guys think, I don't know what you guys are thinking. I'm not even going to go there. The point being is that Robin does a lot of stuff behind this stage, and she's getting more comfortable on screen, and we're trying to give her a lot more space to talk. So it's nice to see people responding to Robin as she's getting more and more airtime on the show. She's been there from almost the beginning. Robin has been there very, very early on, and I had her on screen with me very, very early on. But she tends to, because of her politeness, stop talking when other people talk. And it has been a challenge for me to say, yeah, go ahead and step over these guys if you can, make some space. We'll make some space for you. And so we worked on that. But what's great about this, the best part, the reason why we're talking about this is because it's cool to see Robin has her own little fan base going out there, people that like to see Robin and like to see Robin's cat. So that's a fantastic thing. Thank you so much for calling this out. And that's why I wanted to highlight that one. All right, let's go to another one. Dana Chowden has this comment. He was saying what Brian and his dad talked about in the car, like he was in the back seat. This user is talking about Howard Bloom, I believe, and Howard Bloom wrote this book that was a nonfiction book, but he wrote the book as if he knew exactly what Brian Koberger was thinking, exactly what Michael Koberger was thinking when he drove across the country with his son. And the comment was like, yeah, Howard Bloom came across as a big authority, as if he was there with them and knew like he was in the car with them. And that's the way that book was written. Now, for what I would say for that is kudos to Howard Bloom for writing so well that he makes the reader feel like they're right there along for the ride. That's a job of a good writer. So in a way, I don't want to bust Howard Bloom's balls for writing in such a way that you felt like you were right there in the car with them. The problem that this user is pointing out, and that I'm also going to accentuate as well, is it gives you the impression that he must actually know what happened in that car ride. I believed, for example, with the way he wrote it, that he must have interviewed Michael Koberger, Brian Koberger's father, and got direct from the horse's mouth what they talked about on that road trip. But what I have found, especially in true crime spaces, is some true crime writers, and I'm not going to name some by name, made a career by writing as if they know private conversations that happened and thought processes that happened, and they write a nonfiction book while literally fictionalizing and making up things that they assumed must have happened. And that's the kind of stuff it drives me bonkers. If you're going to assume someone happened, then say in your writing, I assume that what Michael must have been thinking was this. Let us know you're making an assumption. But when you write it in such a way as if you were, as this user said, right in the back seat with them on that car drive, it makes it sound like you know for a fact that's what's said. And I would argue in Howard Bloom's book, especially when it gets to the point of what Brian Koberger was thinking as he drove around in circles trying to work up the nerve to go in and kill all those people in the house because he wasn't sure he was that guy, but he felt compelled to do the killings. All of that thought processes, there's no way in fucking hell. When I say drop the F-bomb, what do I do? When I drop the F-bomb, I try to put on that thing. Parental discretion is advised. I've trained myself when I drop the F-bomb, I pretty much always grab that comment. So there you go, first F-bomb. So the point being is that's my problem. When writers write to the point that the reader feels like they must have got that on good authority, but they're just pulling it out of their ass, I too have a problem with it. So thank you, Dana Chowden, or however you Chowden. Yeah, I hope that you're pronouncing that right, for that comment. All right, let's see if we can get another one on screen. This is another one from the same user. And now I just grabbed these screenshots as I found something I wanted to talk about. So sometimes you'll have the same user name multiple times. Sometimes you'll have a break for a few things and that same user will come up again. Another one from Dana. Have you, and notice that they're a member as well. See the little icon. It's a different icon than the one before, but it's another member icon. Have you all seen Z's video Mystery Man? That part, I don't know what you're talking about. One of the things I wanted to point out, the reason why I highlighted this one is because a lot of people don't realize when I joined YouTube, I started on TikTok. I didn't know any YouTubers or TikTokers at that time, other than I knew some TikTokers from a completely different hobby that I have, but never in the true crime space. So I was completely blind to who all the names were. I have now learned a lot of my competitors, whatever names, because once I started doing it, those names came up. So a lot of people need to realize, or I want people to realize that you might assume I know who all these other people are. Like, I don't know who Z's video Mystery Man is. Who is it? Is Z a YouTuber, a TikToker? Is the video called Mystery Man? I don't know any of those things. And by the way, that's the problem. It's not I'm trying to explain in this little fireside chat. It's not a matter of me being arrogant. I literally, when I started to do the channel, I was sharing my thoughts. And I didn't know who anybody was. And that wasn't a sign of disrespect. I'm not out there watching everybody's YouTube channel and then decided, oh, I want to do that too. It's the other way around. I started doing the YouTube channel and then go, oh, I should probably find out who else is doing this. So that's why some of you feel like I know everybody in this space, and you would be shocked. You would be shocked to know what names I don't know. There's a lot of big names in true crime that you're just assume I know who they are. And I'm like, and if I ever say, I don't know who that is, you're gonna be like, what an arrogant asshole. How the fuck do you not know that guy's name or that woman's name? I just don't know them. I don't watch a lot of YouTube. I started doing it because it was something I had a passion for, and I'm learning everybody's names. So forgive me if I don't know your favorite creator's name, or you think I'm being a prick by not acknowledging them. Chances are, if I'm not acknowledging them, it's probably because I don't know who they are and never seen their stuff. Sometimes, and I will tell you, like on these fireside chats, I do know who they are, and I avoided them for a reason. And if you ask me about them, I'll explain to you why I avoided them. But a lot of times I don't even know who you're talking about. And this is one of those cases. So if you want me to know, keep in mind, when you give me suggestions, again, I don't have a whole bunch of hours of my time, so I can't go watch a whole bunch of YouTube channels. So don't fire at me 30 YouTube channels that I should go check out, because I don't have time to watch 30 different channels and all the videos that they have to try to figure out which ones are good, which ones aren't. Like, I don't have that time to even keep up on my own. But I wanted to point out to you just that point. Sometimes I don't know who you're talking about. Z's Mystery Man is one of those. But I wanted you to hear that so that you understand that basic principle. All right. S.E. Michael, a regular on the show, one of my mods, partner for Robin as well. Essie says, when someone writes a book that's supposed to be nonfiction, that means tell me the truth. Don't tell me half truths, conversations that were made up in your head, or outright lies. That's not good. And once again, this is why I say there are some, and I gotta kill some of this beeping and whatever in the background from other comments. That's why I say I don't like certain true crime writers who make up facts about the story, particularly about conversations they just imagine must have happened and write it as if they know it happened, so that you think they actually did solid research. And oh my God, did you remember when so-and-so said so-and-so to so-and-so? And it was completely made up by the author, who decided that's probably what had to have said, or something like that. And too many times I have to deal with, as a true crime person, somebody saying, well, do you remember so-and-so said this? And then when you do your research, you find out it was some author or YouTuber, even sometimes, who just made up a conversation that must have happened in their logical brain. And then it becomes part of the narrative because, well, this is what they said. And then you're like, well, where'd you get that? Well, you got to think through this. Had to have been what they said. That's a big difference. So thank you, Essie, for bringing that to our attention as well. Another one from my mod, Amanda. Robin Lynn, will you check with Lee and see if he got the donation from Alley Girl? So, by the way, this is a good point to point. I know people were asking me, or Amanda had asked me several times, hey, look, you got a user that wants to make sure you got that donation. And I asked, donation where? Because you could donate to me through gifts like super chats or super stickers and YouTube. You can donate to me on my Cash App, my Venmo, my PayPal account. You can donate money to the GoFundMe records account. We've got a lot of revenue potential streams. And by the way, for those of you who think that we're rolling in cash, we are not. I don't think I've gotten somebody that has given me money on Venmo or Cash App since CrimeCon 2025 back in last year, sometime October. Or was it even before October? I think it was before October. Nothing. Like, people don't donate there, even though it's on our website. But I don't know where you sent your donations sometimes when you say it. But we do see all the donations. So if you sent it to any of our official channels, I did get it. I wasn't sure where to look for it. And then I got the added problem when you say this, like Alley Girl, for example, you may not have donated by the name Alley Girl where you donated. You might have had a different username. That often happens. People donate something to the GoFundMe thing, but their GoFundMe username is different than their YouTube thing. So then I got to try to figure out which one it is. It's very, very hard for me to verify that. I wanted to let you know, especially because you took the time to donate money. Thank you so much. It helps. And by the way, one more time, for people who think that we're rolling in cash and profiting off of people's pain, we are negative. We've been negative since I've started. I'm a year into this and we are negative. We spend more money producing this show and doing the things that we're doing and keeping it running on software and video editing and all this. We spend more money than we bring in. So those who think that I'm making money off these people, you're sadly mistaken. So the money that you do donate to us helps us pay the bills. It does not help us get rich, for God's sake. And conversely, some of you are shitting on me while mainstream media who you support are actually in the positive, in the black, and making money off the stories. So there's the irony on that one. All right, let's get another one up on screen. Paco Jewel 27, if I'm pronouncing it right, they're starting to think differently. My Facebook is starting to be fights every day now, and I love it. People are seeing the issues. Now, I think this user's comment is really good, but it could be read wrong. I don't think this user is saying, I love that people are getting in fights. And that's how some of you may have just read that. That's not what they're saying, I believe. What I believe they're saying is, when I first got into the Idaho 4 case, everybody that I knew said Brian Koberger's guilty. It's plain as day. It's obvious. Why is anybody even talking about this? I can't believe there's YouTubers out there saying he's not. It's clear he's guilty. His DNA was at the crime scene and blah, 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 blah. And guilters just thought it was end of day over. But now, all of a sudden, this person's saying, now they're watching some of those people who said Brian Kober is guilty, getting in fights with people over new surprising details. Like, wait a minute. If he was guilty, then why did this happen? And they're starting to fight and they're starting to argue with each other because for the first time, all the people who said, yeah, he's guilty, why are you still talking about this, are now starting to go, wait a minute, I have a new question. And that's pissing the other people off who are guilters who don't want to be moved. It is uncomfortable to be moved out of your opinion. You've been saying for years, some people, you've been saying for years that Brian Koberger is guilty. And now when all of a sudden, when somebody that you liked and trusted was with you, like, yeah, he's guilty, says, all of a sudden I have a new question. I'm starting to wonder, you have a need, a psychological need for your friend to not turn on you. Hey, you had my back. We both said he was guilty. Now you're changing your mind. Fuck you. That guy's a piece of shit, remember? And they're like, no, I've got new questions. And then those two people get into a fight because they thought they were tight. We're buds. We both thought this guy was a piece of shit. Now you're changing your mind. That makes me uncomfortable. That's what I think this user is talking about. That's a good sign. It means people are starting to wake up. They're starting to get out of their sleep and their slumber of just echo chambering each other. Let's all get together and say he's guilty. Yay. Let's have a club saying he's guilty. Yay. I'm part of something. We all agree he's guilty. Yay. And then somebody comes along and says, I think your guys are wrong. And it makes the whole group feel uncomfortable. No, you can't make us feel uncomfortable. We want to be in the group that says he's guilty. So it's a good thing. And I ranted longer on that than I expected to. All right, this one's from Ange K, 87. One thing I did hear Steve G say today that made me go, if the sheath was planted, then how did Kaylee Gonzalez's blood aspiration get on it if an officer planted it afterwards? Any thoughts? Now, this is a great question. One, I haven't heard Steve Gonzalez say this. Two, I don't remember seeing, I'm not saying you're wrong at all, but I don't remember seeing Kaylee Gonzalez's aspirated blood was proven to be on the knife sheath. So there's several things that you're bringing up that I'm not sure. I haven't heard Steve say that and ask that, and I didn't know Kaylee's aspirated blood, or if they proved it was her aspirated blood, was also on the knife sheath. But let's take it for an assumption that it's true for the moment. Are you with me so far? So if the knife sheath that had unknown male blood on it, including Brian Koberger's DNA. If it also included, well, I believe this part I do believe is true. The knife sheath did include blood of at least one of the victims. So let's assume it's Kaylee. So if if the knife had blood of the victims on it and Brian Koberger on the button snap, then how is it, according to Steve, according through Ange, right? She's saying, Steve said, for all you assholes out there who say that the knife sheath was planted with BK's DNA on it and that some officer came and slipped it into the bed, then why does it also have aspirated blood, meaning, Kaylee spit it out while choking? That's aspiration, right? She coughed or ejected projectile pieces of blood or spittle into the air and it landed on the knife sheath. So if that's true, that aspirated blood from Kaylee ended up on the knife sheath, along with Brian Koberger's DNA on the knife sheath, on the snap or whatever the hell you think it is, strap or snap or whatever, then how do you explain a cop came along and planted it? Do those things jive with each other? It's a really complicated question, but it's one that's really, really good to answer. And so it's a great point. And I'm trying to find out how to frame it. I have stated before, this is my position, stating that the knife sheath is planted is not what I think Ann Taylor was saying. Exactly. What I believe she was indicating, and this is the tricky part, was that the DNA of Koberger was planted. The knife sheath may have been there. The DNA of Koberger was planted. And furthermore, I'm not even sure she's saying that the DNA was planted as much as the DNA profile was fabricated to place Brian Koberger at the crime scene. So I have not personally maintained that a cop came along with a knife sheath in his back pocket, looked around waiting for a moment and slipped it under the bed with Brian Koberger's DNA. I've never thought that was the case, in part because they didn't develop Brian Koberger as a suspect for quite a while after the murder happened. Remember, they said for the longest time that they don't know who did it. They're looking for somebody. And then supposedly the official word was, man, this is a really long answer, but thanks for asking. So supposedly the answer is that the FBI was the one to tell Moscow Police Department, you should start looking into a guy named Brian Koberger. If that's the truth, if it's true that Moscow Police Department, according to the actual record in the court record, heard about Brian Kohberger's name as a possible suspect / tip from the FBI after they had not had a suspect for quite some time, it means it's hard for you to go back and say they had Brian Kohberger on their radar from day one, and Brett Payne came in and slipped the DNA evidence into the scene. Do you follow what I'm saying? So I've always caught that. That it can't be, if the story is true, that they didn't even know Brian Kohberger's name for quite a while, that an officer came and slipped Brian Kohberger's DNA at the crime scene on day one. Unless, and I maintain all these weird shit in my head, unless somebody from Moscow PD was trying to frame Kohberger from day one, and it took that long for the FBI to figure out Brian Kohberger's name and then tell them, hey, you should look at Brian Kohberger, when they are the ones that planted Brian Kohberger at the scene, waiting for the FBI to discover Brian Kohberger and say, hey, you should look at Brian Kohberger. Oh, that's a great idea. We've always, that's great. We'll do that. While secretly they're like, took them long enough to find the evidence we planted on DNA on Kohberger. I don't think that's actually what Ann Taylor was suggesting. What I think Ann Taylor was suggesting is this. Ann Taylor is suggesting, in my opinion, based on what I read from the court docs, and like, wow, this is taking longer to explain than I expected, is that once they had the name Brian Kohberger as a potential suspect, they did some fuckery, as I call it, with the DNA to plant Brian Kohberger at that scene. That's what I believe she means. So the knife sheath, I believe, could have been there from day one. Although I admit, officers on the first pass did not see the knife sheath, and it wasn't until later when Payne came in that he saw the knife sheath. And I admit that that's sketchy. That I do mention on lives. That's where you're getting confused. Sometimes I'll be like, yeah, it is of note. I'll say this all the time. It is of note that the first officer on scene didn't see the knife sheath. And it wasn't until later, when Payne went through the crime scene, that he saw the knife sheath. And it's also of note that Payne being in charge of the investigation is a very strange thing. That is also worthy of note. But to beat the hell out of a dead horse, I've always shied away from saying Brett Payne came in and placed the knife at the scene, that he was the one that placed it and planted it, and he purposely planted it on Kohberger, because again, it doesn't fit the official time frame, which is that they didn't even know Kohberger's name for quite a while after the knife sheath was discovered. Therefore, how do you, like, you know what I'm saying? So again, if you watch carefully what Ann Taylor was saying, she indicated it was the DNA evidence that was planted to place Kohberger at a scene that he was never at. The knife sheath may have been there from day one. The knife sheath may have been part of the original crime, but that doesn't mean that Brian Kohberger's DNA was on it until they planted his DNA on it. Another fuckery that happened is during the sampling of things got ruined and they had to resample. So did it have somebody else's DNA originally on it? But then when they developed a suspect, they said, oh, we resampled it and it's Brian Kohberger, because once they had the name Brian Kohberger, they had somebody's name to attach to that sample. That's the planting of evidence that I believe they're talking about it. And it's super nuanced. Are you catching my difference? I have always shied away. I'll say it again, because I don't think everybody knows this. I have always shied away from trying to say some officer came in and planted the knife sheath at the scene. Now, we have panelists on, wow, we're taking a long time talking about this. We have panelists on the show who believe it is the latter, right? That an officer came and planted the knife sheath that wasn't there at the crime scene and planted it. It's in a really weird place. It's in a weird place for the first officers to have missed. It's in a weird place that looks like, Howard Bloom even said it recently, it looks like the officers put that knife sheath there before taking the picture. Did the police put it there? Now, he's not saying, Howard Bloom, again, you have to listen to carefully the words. Howard Bloom's not saying, did an officer come in and plant the knife? What he's kind of asking is, did police rearrange the crime scene before taking this photo? Because it seems like that knife is in a really weird place. He's shying short of saying an officer came and planted a knife sheath at the scene that wasn't there. And what he's more alleging is the knife sheath may have been there, but did they arrange the covers and take a picture of the knife sheath so that they can document the knife sheath when it wasn't originally in that position? That's more what he's trying to say. It's a battle of listen carefully. It's a battle of listen carefully. So, Ange K. Thank you so much. It's a great question. Yes, If Kaylee's blood is on the knife sheath, along with the unknown male blood, along with Brian Koberger's DNA, then it seems to indicate the knife sheath was there at the time of the crime. But again, Ann Taylor's comment about planted evidence may not have been that she thinks somebody came along later and planted the knife sheath, but rather that someone, once they developed Brian Koberger as a tip, went and made the DNA fit the suspect's name that they had. That's the planted evidence. Another possibility is the knife sheath that was originally at the crime scene is not the same knife sheath that later ends up in evidence after they retested it, because that they bought at Moscow Police Department bought a knife sheath supposedly from Amazon and a K-bar knife from Amazon to kind of replicate the steps that Brian Koberger would have took to buy those items. So they bought their own copy. So someone might say at some point in the investigation, did the knife sheath that they themselves bought became the one that gets photographed on stuff? And again, so long way of saying it is a great question. If there's aspirated blood of Kaylee on the knife sheath along with Brian Koberger's DNA, then it suggests that the knife sheath wasn't planted the way many people say it was, or asks if it was, where an officer came in with a completely clean knife sheath and just tossed it in bed with Koberger's DNA on it. And by the way, another thing I want to have you logic through as we spend forever on this question. If they were going to plant DNA on Koberger that way, do you not believe that they would plant a lot more evidence than a piece of DNA so small that you can't see it with a human eye? If you're going to plant evidence on somebody, plant big evidence on somebody. You wouldn't come in with a microscopic speck the size of a grain of sand that can't be seen with the human eye as your planted evidence. You would make sure that planted evidence got seen, which again makes me believe that it wasn't planted in the way many people think it was planted. It was planted because the DNA or the knife sheath was there, but they may have fabricated the evidence to say that it was Brian Koberger's DNA on it, and that's the way in which the evidence was planted to place Koberger. All right, enough of that. All right, common sense ain't that common says, hi everyone, listening to your lives all the way from Melbourne, Australia. And all I want to say about that is several things. I love that we have an international audience, and I love it. I really mean it. I'm not bullshitting. I love it when you guys tell me where you're watching from. It gives me a little bit of a warm joy to realize that we've got an international audience. And I even like hearing where you're at in the United States. So if you're in the US, I like hearing, and I love hearing when you're from my hometown or my home state of Washington or my current state of Oregon, or if you're from the Pacific Northwest, or if you went to school where I went to school. I love hearing those just as much as I like hearing, I'm watching you all the way from South America or South Africa or, Australia or whatever. Like, all of it's cool. All of it's cool. I like knowing where you guys are from. So thank you. And all of our Australian group, again, I say it a million times, Australians seem to like true crime even more than the US. So it's very, very cool. I've had some very cool experiences with our Australia group. You guys are awesome. And we talked to Jody from the Defense Rests, and she's helping me out with the Kentucky case from Australia. It's very, very cool. So thanks so much. Another one from our mod, Amanda B. The things he was looking at on the internet, serial killers, I'm screwed if they check my data. LOL. We all are. Yeah. Yeah. Again, they go through Brian Koberger's phone allegedly, and they find that he was looking at they literally tried on one documentary to suggest that it was some kind of mean something that Brian Koberger was looking at college age females in bikinis. For fuck's sake, man. Really? Anyways. And then they said, well, he had other types. He had videos or images or searches for passed out girls or drunk girls or, defenseless girls or whatever, suggesting that they're trying to lead America to think a certain way. And all I can say is the same thing that Amanda basically said is, God help me if I ever get accused for a crime and someone starts going through my history. Because I'll be honest with you. I don't want to have to explain anything about my life. I've got interesting thoughts. Let's just fucking leave it at that. Don't go through my fucking search history. By the way, I won't even let somebody borrow my phone. I won't let somebody I know borrow my phone, or a stranger, because I can't guarantee what you're going to see. I'm terrified every time I go to a web browser on a live to pull something up live and show it to you, because I'm afraid that my fucking pre-filled search history or whatever, or sites I've been to, will pop up and I'll be like, shit, I can't believe it just showed that to everybody. Like, I don't know what kind of boring life you all lead, but you know what? Enough of that. Thanks for bringing it up, Amanda. All right, Mama J says, can we talk about how Stacey Chapin was in Washington pushing for them to pass a law that would allow law enforcement to use IgG immediately in investigations? Yeah. Oh, this is going to be another one that's going to take forever. So I went to my first CrimeCon 2025 in Denver, Colorado. It was actually in Aurora, Colorado, which is interesting because I did one of my first true crime blogs about Aurora, Colorado, and the theater shooting in Aurora, Colorado. And that's where the actual Denver CrimeCon was. It wasn't actually in Denver, it was in Aurora, but because Denver has the bigger name, they said it was Denver's CrimeCon, and it was really in Aurora. Anyways, point being is at that, that's where I met JJ from State of the Deep was in Aurora, Colorado. That's where we met. But yeah, that's where the Chapins went on stage with the Middlemans, I think it is, the Middlemans from Autism Labs, and announced that, hey, look, we've got this new partnership and we're going to be pushing for laws. By the way, I swear to you, it felt this way. This is the way it felt to me. So every time they would have these 1 hour presentations with different guest speakers, and one of them was again Stacey Chapin and the Middlemans from Autism Labs. They would have a time for visitors of CrimeCon to come up and stand and ask questions from a microphone, or they would carry a microphone into the audience and take users' questions. And I swear there were fed questions from the audience, meaning paid people who work with, this is how it felt, paid people who worked with Autism Labs and the partnership. So Stacey Chapin admitted that they were partnering with Autism Labs. They were going to be doing work together. The Chapins are going to become a face of Autism Labs to go around and do, they said, we're going to travel around the country and do things like this, where Stacey Chapin gets to go on and tell everybody about the tragedy of losing her family, about her losing her son. And it is a tragedy, but she's going to tell her heart-wrenching story because people will sympathize with her. I'm using my paraphrasing. She will go around the country telling her heart-wrenching story about losing her son and how the Middlemans came to the rescue through Autism Labs, and then pitch it for, how can we help Autism Labs catch more killers? I'm glad you asked. Here's where you can send your money. That's what they did at that CrimeCon. When it got to the point where it was audience questions, the first question, if I remember, the very first question from the audience was, how can we help get more funding to Autism Labs so that this becomes something that can be used in all police stations? Well, that's a great idea. You should be, and then they gave an outline of how you can pressure law enforcement and the government to support having Autism Labs be embedded with all police stations along the country. It was a fed question from the audience. How can we get Autism Labs into more police departments so that we can catch more killers just like the one you caught here? I'm glad you asked. Here's how you get that. Ask your congressmen, ask your senators, push for laws, try to get your local police departments to start using Autism Labs. Thank you, the paid sponsored question from the audience. That's exactly how that felt. So thanks for asking. Yes, I was there. I saw it. It was blatant as day in my opinion, but that's just me as a critical thinker thinks that way. Well, and you obviously. All right, another question from Common Sense Ain't That Common. Did anyone else notice when the detective told Dylan they found DNA in the house and Dylan's voice cracks and she says, "You did?" And then starts saying, "I don't give a shit," or something like that. Common sense. I read the interview from the Idaho State Police asking about questions like, why do you think the killer didn't attack you? And I don't know, maybe he knew me and wanted to protect me. I read their questions, Reddit, where they said something to the effect of the DNA. And that's what I thought you're talking about. When they asked Dylan about the DNA, and then she says, in the written form, I saw something like, "I don't think you're going to find any DNA because we cleaned up." And then the written thing, that the officers, the detectives kind of question, like, what do you mean you cleaned up? Because it was like she literally said, I don't think you're going to find DNA of the killer because we cleaned up. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And kind of questions her about, you cleaned up. And she's like, well, yeah, it was like parents' weekend or whatever. And he's like, yeah, but that was days before. Oh, yeah, we would have cleaned up days before. It was a moment that I called out in the written narrative. I have not heard her voice crack. And that's the only time I remember hearing or reading in the transcripts about her talking about the DNA. So common sense. This is a big, big, big thing. If you've got a video where you think you hear Dylan's voice crack, like, you did? You found DNA? And it's a surprise. And because I pick up on that shit too. I'll call it out all day long. Help me find the video. I haven't seen the video. I read it in transcripts. So if you have the video, please, please, please get that video, that link to that video. And if it's in a video that's really long, meaning like more than 5 minutes, because I don't have time to watch half-hour, 45-minute videos looking for that 1 second snip where it happens, please, 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 if you can, say it's in this video at time marker 45 minutes and 15 seconds, something that I can jump to it and take a look at it. And if I need the context, I'll back up from there. But that would help tremendously, and I would love to cover it. If you know that there's a video in which it sounds like her voice cracks when they talk about the DNA, as if she's kind of like, oh shit, you've got DNA, that would be something I would call out if I've heard it, but I haven't. So thanks for asking. Firebox 133. I'm not sure what to think anymore. After seeing this interview, I'm convinced it's all about the money for the G's. They were just acting a little bit shady to me and not really concerned about the truth. So, where do I start on this one? I think that a lot of us are questioning the financial motivations at this point. And I hate to do so. I've said it before. I've said it again. The families are grieving. I don't want to come across as the guy attacking the families during their time of grieving. And I realize that it's been years now, so maybe the time of grieving is over. We're certainly at the point where we can start asking more blunt questions, because the immediate grieving, I can understand. When it first happened, man, maybe we keep our mouth shut. But it's years down the road now and a person's been convicted. So I think if there's a time to talk, it's now. We're okay to talk. But you're right. You can't ignore the possibility that money is a motivation now for the things that people are saying. That's all I can say. I mean, I've said it a lot on the show. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. You're right. After seeing the interview with the Gonzalez's, you're beginning to think it's more about money. They're acting a bit shady and not concerned about the truth. I have to say that I'm with you on that. It felt like in the beginning, they really just wanted the truth. But at some point, it became less about wanting the truth and wanting the settlement. And that's the way it kind of feels to me too. And I hate that, because I still sympathize. I still sympathize with Christy and Steve and even Olivia to that matter, and others that are unnamed that are going through the grieving process. But the ones, I see them the most. That's why my focus is on them the most. I see them the most. And I feel genuine moments of pain from them. And I feel for them. And I know they hate me. I know they think we're pieces of shit. They call us a bunch of fucking, what do they call us? Trailer trash and shit like that we shoot our videos out of our mom's basement. I get it. They're going to attack the shit out of us and they want nothing to fucking do with this. Even so, I still have sympathy for the family. But it's getting harder and harder and harder to not think that the actions that they're portraying in the public is more about shutting down real inquiry into what happened, because there's now a massive financial motivation for the story to be what they said it is. So yeah, enough said. All right. Paco Joel, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I probably pronounced it differently last time and pronouncing it differently. The guilters don't understand that he pled guilty because they were going to kill him. So that's a great point. Many people ask me, why would anyone plead guilty to something they didn't do? I'm not going to go through all the reasons why somebody pleads guilty to something they didn't do, but this is one of them that we'll focus on because you mentioned it. People aren't considering the possibility. I'm going to rephrase it. People aren't considering the possibility that he pled guilty because they were going to kill him. Listen, if Brian Koberger Let me give you one scenario that talks about this exact comment that this user is bringing up. If Brian Koberger didn't do it, and the real killer is afraid that by Brian Koberger proving to the world that he didn't do it means that the investigation will be reopened and re-examined looking for the actual killer, and the real killer is on the loose right now and thinks they got away scot-free, that real killer and or group of people who killed are going to be extremely pissed off that the investigation was reopened. So if they have any way of getting a hold of Brian Koberger in prison to send a message, it could be, you better shut your fucking mouth and accept the plea deal, because if you don't, my friends are going to knife you, shank you in prison, and it won't be pretty. You're going to be tortured. We're going to fucking do horrible things to you. Maybe we'll even kill your family because we're still on the loose out here. Like nobody's looking at us. So we've got long reach. We'll kill the shit out of you in prison, and it'll be painful, and we'll kill your family too. Take the fucking plea deal. And a lot of people would be afraid. Even if you weren't afraid for yourself, which everyone would, even the most brave person is going to be terrified for themselves. I don't care how tough you are. If you've got a bunch of people out with your number in prison, they're going to get to you. It doesn't matter. We've had somebody that had spent time in prison before tell us that I don't care how big you are. They will find enough people. If it takes more people, they'll find enough people. You will get the message in prison. So I don't care how tough you are. You will get the message. So if they tell you that you're going to get the message, you're going to get the message, and you're going to end up dead. So Brian Koberger could have been afraid for his own life, or even if he wasn't afraid for his own life, he could have been afraid for his family, because again, any scenario in which there are other people who committed the crime on the loose, that would terrify someone into pleading guilty for something they didn't do, because if somebody else did it and he knows somebody else did it, they've already proven they will slaughter people horrendously slaughter people. And so when they tell you, hey, that's coming next for your mom, you better fucking believe them. You've seen my handiwork. This is what their logic would be to Brian Koberger. You've seen my handiwork. Don't fucking think I wouldn't do that to your mom and your sister and your dad. So you better take the fucking plea deal and make this go away. Because if I even think they're coming for me, that shit that we just did in that house is coming for your family next. And you afterwards. You'll read about your family in the mail and the news, and then we're coming for you next. So that's a very realistic possibility of why Brian Koberger would accept a plea deal, because he's terrified for his family's life or his own. So thanks for bringing it up. We'll take a couple more mailbag questions, and then we'll call it for the day. All right. Mary Tyler 7066 says you can't upset the big advertisers, This is a comment, I think, in response to the whole mainstream media just telling the mainstream media narrative. And yes, those mainstream media talking heads are paid for by big advertisers, big companies with big dollars, oftentimes pharmaceutical companies, maybe car dealerships, Budweiser, whatever. They've got big name advertisers. They're not getting by on stupid little, little gifts from people on YouTube. They're making big money, big money. And so they cannot upset their advertisers by entertaining the idea that the real killer didn't go down, because advertisers would pull their advertising money off their channel if they thought that the public might start seeing that person as a conspiracy theorist. So yes, they are incentivized financially to go along with the official narrative, because if they start looking like they're asking the wrong questions and they look a little conspiratorial in that then the advertisers will be like, I want nothing to do. I can't afford to have people not buying my product because we support a conspiracy theory channel. So it is a self-propelling system that the mainstream media will tell the narrative that makes advertisers happy, which means I don't want to be associated with conspiracies or anything like that. So if you start going, you're free to do whatever you want, but I'm free to pull my advertising dollars from your show. So they will not say things that are going to risk their advertising dollars. So yeah, a little different on our side. We're not paid by big advertising dollars. So couple more and we'll be done. Poetic Justice, another member, says if they want truth, that that would request internal audit of the case with Attorney General, MPD, and ISP. Now, Poetic Justice, I have to guess what you're saying, but I think you're on to something big right now, which is that if the families, and I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but that's how I'm interpreting it. If the families truly wanted to know the truth, the families would request an audit of the case by the Attorney General, MPD, ISP, Idaho State Police. I, by the way, as a member of the public, have requested the Attorney General of Idaho look into the handling of this case by the Moscow Police Department and Idaho State Police to look into it as well. And I was told, no, they won't do that. The Attorney General's office's official response was they don't investigate departments like a police department. They only investigate elected officials. So so they recommended I go ask Bill Thompson to open an investigation to Moscow Police Department. And I laughed, as most of you who probably heard that probably laughed at home as well. We're not going to ask Bill Thompson to investigate Moscow Police Department when the two of them worked together to convict Brian Kohberger. So you probably can't go to Bill Thompson. But the Attorney General in Idaho will not investigate Moscow Police Department because it's a department, it's not an elected official. Bill Thompson is an elected official. So you might be able to get, if we wanted to go back and ask them to investigate Bill Thompson, because he's an elected official. But who has the real power? This is getting to the crux of this question. Who has the real power to do this is the families. If the families themselves said that they wanted an audit done of the handling of this case because they don't think that it was done right, and they have the most say, they have the most pull. The families themselves could say, I think you guys botched this investigation. But the families aren't doing so. But Poetic Justice, you have a point. If in my opinion, if the families truly, so there's two ways to word this. If the families truly thought that it was done wrong, then they should be going and taking that route. Now, the problem is maybe the families do think they got it right. I think if you listen to Steve Gonzalez, that's not true. Steve already kind of hinted over and over again that this was just the tip of the iceberg. Wait till we get to court, because I think Steve Gonzalez knew there was other people involved, and he was told, let's get one of them put away first, and then we'll go after the others. And maybe he thought that was going to happen. But when they robbed America of the trial, then all the others are not going to be investigated, and it's over. And that's what made Steve pissed more than anything, in my personal opinion. I could be wrong, but that's my personal opinion. Is I think he was expecting this to continue, and the others would be put in jail as well. But everybody took the easy route out, which is a single plea deal. And that's what I think personally, I think that's what Steve Gonzalez is most mad about, is that they got a plea deal from Kohberger that said, I did it and I did it alone, end of story. And we're never going to go after any alternate perpetrators or other suspects, because Steve thinks, I think that there are others involved. But now he's changing his tune and saying, no, I don't think anybody else is involved. You guys are all a bunch of pieces of shit. But now there's a financial incentive on the line to say it was one guy and one guy only. So now I don't know what to think. I've always given Steve the benefit of the doubt until recently. And by the way, another comment, maybe it's going to come up, maybe I'm going to miss it, I don't know. Steve's a smart guy. I do believe that. Steve's a smart guy. And so he knows damn well what he's doing. And so I think a lot of what he's doing can be explained because he knows what he's doing. So good question. Thank you so much. All right, we'll end on this comment from Common Sense, just because it's getting to be about an hour. Yes, I'm going to do some editing and clean this up so it'll be less than an hour, but that's okay being less than an hour. This is a trial balloon to see if you like this. Common Sense asked this question, and it's not the best or the worst question. All of these are just being done in order of which I pulled them up on my screen as I took screenshots. If you like this, I'll continue to do this series. It's just kind of a little bonus series. Maybe it'll be members only, but I'm going to try to make it available for the public. But if the public doesn't find it worthy enough and it kills the algorithm because it shows people that they don't give a shit, then we won't do it. We'll move it to members only. I don't know. We're going to trial balloon this. Last question. Common sense. 99% of people don't know anything about autism, its traits, and how it presents in everyday interactions with peers. That's why they view his behavior as stalking and weird. And yeah, I think that's somewhat true. I don't know if it's 99%, but a lot of people don't understand people with flat affects due to a condition like autism spectrum disorder. And so they see somebody with a flat affect, which means they don't show a lot of emotion. They don't smile a lot. They don't get angry a lot. They just seem kind of flat, and they talk kind of flat. And it's a condition, right? It's part of a condition that they have. And I hear something vibrating around me, which is why I'm looking, because I'm trying to find out what the hell's vibrating. Apparently my phone's going off and I don't know where my phone's at. But the point being is that, I do, it's in my pocket. All right. The point being is a lot of people don't know that. And again, this is why the defense said, if you're going to go put Bryan Kohberger to death, we have to start talking now, immediately. You have to do it early. You have to do it early. It's a long story, but if you're going to put death on the table and you're going to execute somebody, you have to have time to work on mitigating factors. One of the mitigating factors is Bryan Kohberger is diagnosed, we believe, with autism spectrum disorder. And if that's the case, he has a flat affect. And if he has a flat affect, he's just going to look guilty. His very look is going to look guilty. And so you have to explain that to people before a jury puts him to death and said, yeah, he's guilty. Look at him. He's cold, calculated. He just stares at you and doesn't make a lot of reaction to anything. He never even seems to, he doesn't seem to smile. He doesn't seem to frown. He just looks at you with those cold, flat stare. Flat stare is kind of a characteristic of some people with autism. And so the jury needs to understand that before they decide to kill somebody because they had a chemical imbalance or a mental imbalance or some kind of disease that they couldn't, like whatever the case may be, those are all mitigating factors in which a jury has to hear, hey, maybe he looks that way not because he's guilty, but because he has a condition. And that's the way that people with that condition present. And here's the evidence that you should consider before you kill the man. That would have been necessary at the point before they killed him. But it never went to trial. The judge didn't even want to hear it. The judge did not. The judge specifically said, don't ask questions that's going to lead to a mental psych evaluation of Kohberger, because the judge knew that if the jury heard that he had autism and it was documented, that they'd be in trouble, because then they couldn't kill him, because people would be like, well, it's cruel and unusual punishment to kill somebody that just simply has a disorder that makes them look different than us. So we can't just kill people because they look different than us. And Hitler was trying to avoid going down that road by saying, don't go down the road of asking for mental evaluations of Kohberger and putting it in part of the public record, because then you can't execute him. So it's a long way of saying, I agree with common sense. A lot of people don't understand the autism thing. I probably don't understand it as well as you do. But I understand it enough to tell you that I understand the nuances of somebody with autism. I've had friends who had some form of on the spectrum, and yes, they don't react to things the way that you would expect. And sometimes, especially with someone like me, I'll tell you my last thing. I had a person that was in my life, kind of a friend, that had that condition, and I like to make jokes. I make jokes a lot. I say things sarcasm, and I can't tell you the number of times he would have to say to me, dead serious, are you being funny or are you serious? Because he doesn't know. They don't read people the same way. Sarcasm is taken literal to them, and so they're like, was that supposed to be a joke, or do you mean that? And they really don't know, because they don't read people the same way. They themselves don't present the same way. And so it became kind of sad to me to realize, oh, like this person literally can't get my humor, because I make sly little references and I say things sarcastically that I think everybody knows I'm just kidding. But somebody with autism might be like, well, I think he thinks this because this is what he said. And other people like, quote unquote, I hate the word, quote unquote, normal people, which is fucked up in the first place, because they're not abnormal just because they have autism. But quote unquote, normal people would be like, no, how could you possibly take it that way? Well, because again, somebody with that kind of disorder they don't pick up on nonverbal cues, and they don't project nonverbal cues. And so they don't get it like you and I do. So thanks for bringing that to our attention in that discussion. If you liked this format, which is a little long and whatever, but if you like to just put it on while you're driving or listening to something through your day, put on headphones at a work job where you're allowed to listen to things on headphones because you don't really need to see it. Let me know. Let me know that you want to see more of these, and I'll do more of these, and then we'll gauge it. If you like to see it and it does well, we'll keep doing it public. If you like to see it but it doesn't do well, then maybe for $2.99, which is what it costs to be a member, I'll do it for members only, and we'll keep doing it for members only. But for right now, I want to do it public if we can. It's just got to show attention. So like it, subscribe to it, thumbs up it, and comment on it so that the algorithm goes, oh, we kind of like this content. All right. First Fireside Chats in the bag. I'll get better with it if you guys liked the comments, or if you like the format. If you like the format, I'll try to make it better and better as we go. But let me know if it's even something worth improving. Have a good one.